Hey everyone, Matt here from Docs Running, and today we're going to do a 100-mile review of the New Balance Fuel Cell SC Trainer or Super Comp Trainer version 3. Now, this is the Super Trainer and accommodating partner to the SC Elite version 4 that New Balance has. It has still a lot of the similar components: higher stack height, full-length carbon fiber plate that runs through the length of this shoe, a EVA PIBA blend, unlike the PIBA-based foam that I understand the SC Elite has. So not quite as bouncy, but still a very good, resilient ride underfoot. This shoe has changed completely from the last version. They redid the whole thing, redid the geometry. Stack height actually decreased a little bit. They really made this shoe a lot more stable than the older version. I wouldn't say less fast, but just a tiny little less bouncy and a little bit more stiff, which also adds to the stability and inherent guidance of this shoe. Now, I'll be honest with you, I first got my hands on this when I went to a recent Running Warehouse event. I got to break this in early in the morning with my wife, Regina, Isabel in the stroller, and Ioana, who was great to break. We both had a pair of these, and we're trying to break them in and see what our thoughts were. You can see that video actually on his channel. But I did not like this shoe initially, and I still have very mixed feelings about it. So, and for whatever reason, I still took it to 100 miles. So I really want to share with you, and the purpose of this video is going, hey, what is the deal with this shoe? How does it change after 100 miles? And who this shoe may or may not be appropriate for. If you're even interested in this video, I want you to walk away with the better idea of going, yes, this is for me, or nope, I'm moving on. So let's talk about specs first, as always. So men's size 9 is coming in at 9.2 ounces or 261 grams. Women's size 8 is coming in at 7.3 ounces or 209 grams. My size 10 comes at 9.8 ounces or 178 grams, so still not, yeah, no, 278 grams for, again, size 10. Now, I mentioned there's a couple things about the ride that I kind of didn't really enjoy, but really learned what they were better for. So as I broke this shoe in, it's really oddly firm, and I think that really comes from the fact that the plate sits so close to the foot. That's really, really high up there. And a lot of what you feel initially with shoes is the things that are closer to your foot are more likely to impact how you perceive a shoe's cushioning and other things, right? So an insole, for example, is one of the top things that influences how soft or cushioned people might feel a shoe is. Then it's the other layers below that, and the higher up you go close to the foot, the more that's going to influence what you feel. Because the plate is so close to the foot, it does make it very stable and rigid underfoot, but also makes it feel weirdly firm. Like there's this kind of interesting transition as you go through the shoe. Is like when you land on it, it feels very firm, and then you get the bounce under it. It took me about 30 miles to actually feel a little bit of that bounce because the midsole just needed a little bit of time to break in. I will say it's much better now. It still doesn't feel like a absolute super foam. It just feels like a super trainer for sure, but it still feels oddly on the firmer and obviously stiff side because of the full-length carbon fiber plate. There's no flexibility of the shoe, but it does actually roll really nicely off the forefoot with that added stiffness. So that firmness and stiffness with that like late stage bounce, I don't know how to describe this, really feels better for up-tempo runs and workouts. This is exactly what I've used this for the majority of my mileage. I just found this was just a little bit too stiff for easy runs, which I know it's kind of as the trainer is kind of meant for, but I loved it for up-tempo runs, especially up-tempo long runs, which has been a staple of my base training, my wife's base training, as we were working on getting back into shape, pushing a stroller for longer and longer miles. It was great going a little bit fast and easy, just a little bit up-tempo, and then I used it for a lot of tempo runs and interval runs on the road, where I wasn't really ready to start using a full-on super racing shoe, but using a super trainer, especially a plated one that has just a little more guidance to it, worked really well. So if you have a little bit more up-tempo needs, but something that can also double as a training shoe and long-run shoe, it's not nearly as aggressive as a super racing shoe, this is actually going to be a really, really good option for people. And I think this is a better option for a lot of people than the SC Elite version 4 because it's just a little bit less aggressive, but it still has a little bit of that bounce, still has it much more stable than the SC Elite version 4. I'll probably have to do a comparison review at some point. And it's just a little bit more forgiving than that shoe and not being as super, but it can still move. It still does really well for longer distance stuff when you're trying to move maybe at marathon pace or a little bit up-tempo stuff. And I think, as I've said before, a lot of the super trainers are going to work better for the average runner looking for a marathon racing shoe that'll actually get to the finish, because maybe speed isn't like all that speed isn't the most important thing. I think this is a shoe that's going to be a lot more forgiving for that while still having enough aggressiveness to handle faster workouts, up-tempo stuff, while not being super crazy in any of that stuff. So that's kind of the ride thing. Does have a nice heel bevel, rolls really nicely, fairly stable, which I'll talk about in a second. Nice toe off in the transition here, but still has that notable stiffness thanks to the plate. Now, before I get to the guidance stuff, I got to talk about durability, which is always a big question for me, and this is 100 miles. I will say I was really nervous about this outsole piece because I was worried I was going to tear this off, but this held on for dear life and is only just beginning to come up a little bit. I have not worn through the outsole. It's stayed really, really nice and really durable, and it also grips fairly well too. So, and I've used this for a bunch of different really aggressive stuff. So if you're looking for something that's durable, unlike a lot of the super racing shoes, this can definitely handle the mileage. You want to put a lot of miles on this shoe will be able to handle this regardless of where you land, because there's a lot of really, really good outsole coverage there that handles a lot of stuff. Now, to stability and guidance, this is greatly improved over version 2, which I found very unstable and couldn't really do long efforts in, but it was fast. It was a shoe that responded really well. It was very soft and responsive. This one has much better sidewalls, a much wider shape overall, and the plate that adds the stiffness there really makes this, I think, stable neutral, almost stable neutral, just because it's so rigid side to side. I've done plenty of long runs in this shoe, not had any issues. So if you're looking for a super trainer that's a little bit more stable, this is one of the ones that's on that list that can actually do really, really well, especially if you only need mild sidewalls and big ones are maybe too aggressive for you. There's a lot of elements that work very well together while also not being stable in your face, right? Some of the sidewalls that are pretty big or some of the rigidity in some shoes can be a little much. This one's like, oh, I'm really centered, I'm not getting pushed one way or the other. It's a really nice balanced ride outside of that stiffness and firmness. Now, last thing going into the upper. Nathan and I talked about this shoes in particular. I'd really encourage you, if you don't want a really snug kind of fit, and I'll talk about snug with an asterisk sign next to it, especially in the forefoot, you should really try a half size up. I know that's not always possible for everyone, but if you can go try this in person, or there's some shipping option where you can try your normal size and half size up, I'd really consider getting a size up. For me, I went with size 10 in this as what's usually sent to me. I would really like to try a size 10 and a half because the toe box tapers really quick and makes this shoe feel short every single time I start a run in this shoe. Usually it breaks in, although that might be just because my toes are getting a little crushed by the end of the run. But after things warm up, I don't usually notice it. But the beginning of the run, every time, all 100 miles, it's just felt like things are a little bit cramped here. The midfoot doesn't feel like that. There is a little extra volume here, a little extra width, as kind of classic for New Balance. So I actually had to tighten the laces down here to get a little more security. And the heel does have a fairly stiff heel counter. So again, those that are sensitive to those, be cautious. It didn't bug me too much because it's really nice and rounded, but it's just kind of an odd tapered toe box, wider midfoot, normal heel. So if that's something you need, or if you aren't worried, if you have maybe a little more narrow forefoot, this might not be an issue, but you especially have a wider forefoot or you're sensitive to tapers, I'd really suggest a half size up. According to Nathan, if I remember correctly, it actually made things a lot better for him. So I would really encourage you to go, hey, double check on your sizes for this shoe. It has broken in a teeny bit, but not as much as I would maybe hope. So sizing is a little bit finicky. So SC Trainer has definitely evolved in its personality. I did a version 2 versus 3 some time ago comparing the two of them compared to the last version. This is really different than version 2. Version 2 was really fast, aggressive racer. This one is stiffer, more stable, and I think works better for longer distance racing still, but it's not nearly as bouncy as Fastless version. You trade that in for a lot more rigidity and stiffness and being a little bit more stable. So I do think this is more, again, a better option for those who maybe want something a little bit more up-tempo but can't handle maybe a super racing shoe, or maybe find the super racing shoes are way the heck too expensive, and $180 is a little bit better deal, which for the durability and kind of the versatility of what you can use this for, I think this is a lot better option for a lot of people. So as always, I hope this helps. I'm going to say that again in just a second because that's the only way I know how to end these videos. And what I want to know below is, again, do you agree with me or you disagree with me? I especially want to hear if you disagree and tell me why, either in the sizing or the underfoot feel. I know Yuan and I had initially similar experiences, and then things kind of changed where he thought he felt a lot more of that bounce and it softened. I didn't feel like it softened, but I got a little bit more of that bounce. Please let me know. Always curious to know how people are experiencing these shoes and if these reviews are even helping. And then finally, like I said, because I don't know how else to end these videos, hope this helps you make good decisions about what shoes to wear and what shoes to consider.